up, you phonies? How's it going? Welcome to another Blender VFX video. In today's video, I want to create something fresh, something new, because I got sent this cute clip of a baby crawling over the kitchen floor. And the job is make something cool with it. That is the kind of video I would rather do in a live stream. So you can expect me making videos like that in a live stream where I can interact with the audience so you guys can make suggestions what I could do to a clip like that. But this one is just gonna be me. I'm gonna try to come up with something cool with just an iPhone clip, a very low quality iPhone clip, I gotta say, of a very cute baby crawling over the floor. So that's gonna be very interesting. So when I look at this clip, I can already see that I should have enough tracking markers to track this clip, but whatever VFX I'm about to do, I want those VFX to be behind my baby here. It's not my baby, it's a baby. Behind this baby here, and also in front. And that's already the first problem, because if I just import this clip as is, and I'm gonna start making VFX, I'll have to decide, do I want my VFX to be behind or in front? But I can't do both just like that. And I'm sure there's lots of workflows how to get around this problem. I mean, people do that all the time. In my particular case, I'll try something new, something I haven't tried before. I have my clip here in After Effects. I'm gonna rotoscope this baby out frame by frame, so I have a clean plate of this baby. Then I'm gonna import both the video itself into Blender and the rotoscope baby, and then I can have some effects behind and some effects in front, and let's just hope it's gonna work. What kind of effects? I mean, you probably saw it in the intro before. I don't know yet what we're about to do, but it's gonna be interesting, so stay tuned. So my first job is rotoscoping that baby. The way I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate my video layer with Control D, and now I'm gonna double click this. Up here is the rotor brush tool, and now I can draw a mask around my baby, everything I want to have rotoscoped. And I have to be very detailed with that because I don't want anything else, and I don't want like fingers to be cut off or anything, because that could look weird. With holding Alt, I can reverse this effect, so I can cut off everything I don't want to be part of this video layer. But as you can see, already the software has a hard time to figure out what is baby and what is not. But let's just do our best. I don't expect to do my best work here in this effect. I just try to make something fun. And all the imperfections, everything what didn't work out perfectly in the end, I'll just cover with dust and smoke, because maybe we're gonna just place this baby as a giant into a city, and the city is about to get destroyed. So that is an okay job of rotoscoping one frame. Here I think this is part of the background. Especially for the very first frame you're rotoscoping, you want to do as best job as you can, because everything afterwards is going to be dependent on your first shot, so make sure you do a decent job. Okay, let's say that's good enough. Now we're gonna look at the entire thing, and it's gonna automatically trying to rotoscope every frame afterwards, and you see the software is doing a decent job to rotoscope it frame by frame. And let's just hope it's going to continue like that. It still looks good, but we have almost 14 seconds of video, so it is not unlikely that eventually the rotoscope is not going to work anymore. But so far, so good. Great, we managed to rotoscope this little cute, adorable baby throughout the shot, and I think it was good enough. I'm going to adjust my rotoscope settings a little. I'm going to increase the feather, shift edge a little into the negative, contrast is fine, and reduce chatter just a tiny bit, because it was quite a good rotoscope. And now when I go back here and remove my background layer, I can see my baby is rotoscoped. So for Blender, I'm gonna use two different videos. I'm gonna use just the background with baby and the background, and also the baby separate so I can have effects behind it and effects in front of it. So I'm gonna export this two videos separately. I'm gonna export just a video clip. For that, I'm gonna go to compositing, pre-render, gonna make a new folder. So I'm gonna import image sequences, baby background, save. Now under my settings, I go to say high quality, but we're gonna adjust it a little. We're gonna go in PNG sequence, RGB and alpha. That one is important, at least for the second one. So now we're gonna export a PNG sequence. And that means that we're gonna have an image sequence of, I don't know how many frames it's gonna be, 500 frames, 500 different images, and then back in Blender we're gonna put them all back together. Great, and now that my background is rendered, now I'm just gonna render my foreground. Go again to composition, pre-render, make sure the settings are all the same like before. High quality, let's check it real quick. PNG sequence, RGB and alpha, very important, otherwise we won't get this transparent background. And here I'm gonna pick another folder, otherwise it's all gonna be in one. Baby foreground, and save and render. All right, now that our two videos are rendered, it's time to get into Blender and let's see what we can make out of them. So this is my Blender scene in the beginning. I have my little Michal here, usually for scale references and a camera. We don't need the camera, so I hit X and delete. Now I'm gonna go to my motion tracking tab. I open my video, baby background. I hit A to select them all and open clip. I set scene frames in prefetch. Now I can scrub through the timeline and see this is my video. And now it's time to track my footage. So I go to the very first frame, go to my tracking presets, hit blurry footage, hit normalize, and click detect features. Okay, I didn't detect that many features and most of them are useless, so I'm gonna delete them. So I will set my own markers. I go to high contrast points like this one, make this a little bigger. This one should be good. And in the end, I'm gonna need 8 good tracks. So I'm just gonna keep making them and I hope they're all gonna work out. I do not want to track my baby itself, just the background, so that part is important. In case you wonder how I make those keyframes, I hold Control on my keyboard and then click with the left mouse button to create a keyframe, and then with S I can scale them up or down. Now I have a good amount of trackers and I hope they're gonna work. I'm gonna hit A to select them all and now track forward. And you can see how it tracks my footage. My baby is moving a lot and I hope that's not gonna disturb any of those keyframes. It did this one and probably this one as well. We will see in a second. Maybe we're gonna be lucky. Looks good right now. We're almost at the end. The baby is coming closer to the tracking marker. I didn't hit it yet. Are we gonna be that lucky? Can we use this tracker? We will see in a second. And we good. Nice. So now we have our scene tracked. Now we just have to hope that our tracking solve is going to be good. So we hit on solve, hit keyframe, focal length, and optical center. And now let's pray that the tracking is going to be good. Solve camera motion, and great. We have a solve error of 0.62 and that should be great. Even though we're losing this tracker here, I don't think we need to do anything else on this. So now what we're going to do is going to set as background and set up tracking scene. Up here we can see that we have tracking markers floating all over the place. We have our camera here. When we look at this, we can see that our camera is moving, but still our tracking markers are all over the place because Blender doesn't know yet what is our ground. So we have to set that up. For our origin, we're going to set this one. This is going to be our origin. So I click on it, set origin. Now when we look through the camera, it already should look better. Now we're going to select 3 markers which are our ground. So we're going to select our origin, another one on the ground, and maybe one on the right here, and we hit on floor. Now Blender knows what is our floor. And you see how our camera is tilted, just like our real camera is tilted. So that is good. Now the next step is select one marker away from the origin and determine this is going to be our x-axis. The great thing is those are parallel to each other, so that should work fine. The next step here is going to be to set our scale, which is not super important because we're gonna work with absurd amount of scale here. Our baby is gonna be huge because I want it to be maybe a monster like Godzilla in a city, destroying the city, something like that. So still, we're just gonna select two markers and set our scale. So I'm gonna determine a distance and just do 11. If we go to something higher, we can see our model here, my Miho I had before. You might not be able to see it, but it's very tiny and that's what we want. So we're just gonna start with that. So we're done here in our motion tracking, so we're gonna go to layout now. So nothing changed yet, but when we go look through our camera, we can see our Miho here is very tiny and this is our ground. We're gonna select both and bring it where our origin is, like right here. Maybe turn it on the z-axis so it's exactly the size. Yeah, let's do it exactly the size of one of those tiles. Now when I compare those two, I feel like my baby here is still not big enough. So the scale of my Miho, it's still too small. So I'm gonna go back to my motion tracking tab, have those two still selected, and make this number, the distance, bigger. Set scale. Now he's even smaller. Let's make it even bigger. Set scale. Perfect. That's what I want. Now, back to my layout. Now it's time to be creative here. I'm gonna set up my things a little better, so my ground is gonna go into the foreground. I'm gonna delete the light I have in here and delete the background so it's all just one collection. A few more adjustments I want to make. I click on my camera, go to my background here and increase the opacity. So my background video is in full opacity. I don't want it to be transparent like this. I want it to be fully visible. And in the end, I'm going to replace this video anyways with my transparent baby. But let's work like this for now. Let's move our 3D objects back to somewhere where the baby's hand is. Let's make this the new origin point. Now I'm going to make the ground bigger because this is going to be my shadow catcher, and I wouldn't mind if it was filling the entire ground. Just make sure you don't move it away from the ground. It always stays on 0. So when I look through side view, it's always going to be on the ground point. I don't want it to be hovering or anything, then that's going to mess up all the shadows. So that's what I want here. And now it's time to be creative. What are we going to do with our baby here? I'm going to make the shadow catcher transparent for now. And let's see, maybe we can have a few skyscrapers here. Let's see if we can find those on the internet. I'm gonna use Blender Kit for that. Skyscraper. Okay, I have Manhattan, which is great. All the other ones are not free, but let's see what Manhattan looks like. Great, it looks like this is a 3D scan of Manhattan. It's not to scale right now, but that doesn't matter. So we're just gonna find a good spot where our baby could be. And I can see there is room right here where the baby could be, right here. So I'm gonna scale this up until it looks good. Like here, make it bigger. Okay, something like that. Now it's time to bring actually our baby in, because as you can see, we don't have a baby in 3D space. This video is just our background, so it will just disappear in the background. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna Shift A and import images as planes. And now I'm going to go on my baby foreground, select all, make sure to hit animate image sequences, now import. Now we try to find it, it's somewhere here in the ground. And instead of bringing this up, I'm going to bring my city down until it's somewhere in the ground. Now this is my image, it's my video of the baby. When I turn on my material preview, I can see that I have my baby here. But I'm going to scale up my baby. I'm going to go on material preview here as well until it's the size of our background, so it matches the movement of the camera. Doesn't have to be exact, but as exact as possible. So I'm going to turn off my Manhattan model for a second. So I'm going to try to position it exactly where my baby is. Let's just hope that's close enough. So on my camera, I can just turn down the opacity, so I don't need this anymore. So I'm going to bring my Manhattan back up, and this is my Manhattan now. There's already a few things which are problematic with my Manhattan model. It was shot in daylight, so I can see shadows, so I can't manipulate the lighting too much, and also the lighting, the way it is on the baby, doesn't match my buildings here. So this is definitely not going to be a perfect effect, but let's just get it as close as we can. Now I'm going to bring my baby more to the ground, that it barely touches the ground. I can even bring it like behind a building like this. So when I look at it, it's like behind the building, and that could sell the effect very well. Bring it a little higher. There you go. A little more to the left. Okay. Now there's gonna be a lot of trickery to make this look better. For example, I'm gonna use a lot of haze on the ground layer, so we don't really see the contact points to the ground, which is gonna sell the effect better because our baby's not gonna throw perfect shadows. But let's just make this effect as good as we can with the possibilities we have here. So the first thing I'm trying to do is replacing some of these buildings which are very close to the camera, replacing them with higher res models, because this here is just a 3D scan. It's very hard to make this look good in the end, so I'm just going to try to find some high-rise buildings which are a little more detailed, because that's going to make everything look better. Like this one, for example, it's a procedural building, and let's just hope for the best. This one ain't it. Let's try to find something better. That one could work. It's not quite tall enough, but maybe we can cheat it a little, but building it on top of each other, that could work. Also, since this is such a big scene and I don't need that much of it, I might just remove a big chunk of it. So I believe everything until here we don't really see. So I'm going to go in edit mode that has lots of polygons, go into face selective mode, select everything to the left here, and I see a few buildings here we can see in the distance, but that's not really important. I'm going to select a few more here in the background. Everything what's not in the shot, I'm just going to delete faces. The more polygons we can save, the better. I just keep an eye on my scene up here, what I actually see in the shot, and delete what we can spare. Also, one more thing you can do to fasten up your render, turn up your Passepartout. It's also in the camera settings. That means nothing is going to get rendered outside our frame here. Turn this up, so that should go smoother now. And make sure when you delete faces in your environment that you are in X-ray view, so you also select the edges you don't see. That's important. I'm just going to keep deleting until we only see the polygons we need, because the fewer polygons you have, the faster the render. And you don't want to render objects and vertices which are not even seen in the shot. So be smart about these things, but also make sure to not delete too much. So always keep an eye on here. If you see anything yellow pop up you're about to delete, don't delete it. Like here, for example, I selected the end part, but I can see some faces I selected also. I don't want to delete that part. Amazing, that should do for now. Going back to object mode. Now when I go on cycles, you're going to see that actually we don't see that much because we don't have any lights set up yet. And that's an important part, to make sure to set up your lights before you put too much effort into your scenes, because you might be putting too much effort in it and you don't see all those details. So make sure to set up your lights and cameras always first. For the lighting, I always like to try to do an HDR first, because that could save me a lot of time and trouble lighting my scene. So I'm just gonna look for like a urban city. Let's see what I have available. This is my asset browser. Those are my HDRIs, and I'm just gonna look for like a city, skyscrapers, anything I could actually use in the background. I can even type in city and I hope something good pops out, like this one. And I'm just gonna drag and drop it in there, and that's gonna light my scene. And it's also going to fill up my background with image, so I don't have any blank spots. Now my model is a little more blue than the rest, so I could either adjust everything so it looks like my city model, or I can try to make my very blue buildings, because I assume it's the blue from the sky, reflections from the sky. I try to adjust those. So I'm just going to go to my materials and see how this is set up. And I have a diffuse here into the base color. So I'm gonna try to make it less blue. And the easiest way is with either RGB curves node. Let's try that first. I'm gonna go to my blues and bring my blues down. It's turning a little green, but I can also turn my greens down. Bring my reds up a little and play around with those colors until it kind of matches the rest of the, like this building here, for example. Because this building really is the only thing which is lit by the HDRI properly. So that's what I want. I want it to look like this. Now we're getting a little closer here. Great. So my baby, when I looked at the actual video, it's a kitchen. So the lights are coming from everywhere. That's why an HDRI is a good call. But when I want to look at my HDRI, I'm in my EV viewport. I click on this little button and hit scene lights and scene world. Now I can see my actual HDRI and I can actually rotate it the way I want. Right now this is in the background. I could turn it by going to my world settings. When I open this, I can rotate my HDRI in the right direction. If I want more skyscrapers in the background, I can move them a little further back so it looks like it's actually part of the scene. Rotate it a little back, because right now it looks like it's falling off in the end. So yeah, that'll do. Now I can also adjust my little guy here, my little big monster. See how his materials are set up. Right now it's a principled BSDF. I try to just use an emission node. Plug this in, plug this into the surface. I also need a transparent node because otherwise you won't be able to see the background again. So I mix those two. This is a mix shader. Use my alpha for the factor, and that's it. Now I can adjust my emission and my colors all separately. Like I can see that he's more warm than my background, so I can adjust that with other nodes like my RGB curves. Plug this in between. Let's have him a little darker, not as warm, not as green, until it matches my environment. Now one thing I want to do is I want the focus to be on my baby always. The way we're going to do that is I select my camera, go in my camera settings, turn on depth of field, and under the eyedropper tool I'm going to select my baby. So everything else is going to be out of focus. Everything what is in the foreground or the background is going to be slightly out of focus. With the f-stop you have to be careful. If it's going to be too low, it might look like a miniature. So don't go too low on this, but maybe we can get away with it a little bit. I'm going to place one more building right in front just to cover up a little bit of those imperfections of my 3D scan model. I'm just going to place it somewhere, let's say here. Turn it a little towards the camera, the most detailed parts. Great. Now here on the ground, I would like to place maybe a few cars in my little Mihao I was using before. I can also have him here on the ground. Let's say he's like watching our monster. He's not going to be moving. Obviously it would be preferable that he's moving, but it's going to be a lot of extra work to have lots of more people here. So I'm just going to place this one. Let's look for some low poly cars in Blender Kit. Those are too high res. That one might work. Let's place this one here because they don't have to be very detailed. And scale them down a little because since it's that far away we don't need any details here. So, and under the car paint node, what I'm going to do is our car paint, I'm going to try to make those cars a random color when I place more of those. So I'm going to use an object info node, place the random into the color, and that should give our cars random colors. Let's have a hue and saturation node and before, and here we can change the color to any color, and since it's random it should adjust the colors very randomly. So I'm just going to animate their location. Let's do that in top view. So from the beginning to the end it just drives a little bit. Let's do the same thing on the first car, and you can go on with that as much as you want. I'm just going to do a very basic job that just some movement is happening. So I'm going to animate those 2 points again. So when we look at it, we can see our babies in our scene. We have this person here and our cars are driving from A to B while the scene is happening. So we have some movement going on the streets. More is always better, but since it's just a little tutorial, I'm just going to keep it simple. My biggest worry is that my baby here is a little floating around, so we might need to reposition him a little, but that was to expect, since when you look at the scene, he's like floating around. We need to bring him closer to the ground, a little closer to the camera. Yeah, that's gonna work better, but the problem is he's gonna be dipping into the ground, but we're gonna figure it out. But tracking wise, it definitely looks better already. So now one thing I want to do is just to try real hard to make it look more real. I'm gonna add haze to the scene, so everything is gonna be dipped in haze. The way I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna Shift A, make another cube, make it big, and from side view I'm gonna try to dip it into the ground like this, that he's like halfway in the haze. From top view, I'm gonna make it bigger on the y-axis and bigger on the x-axis, move it until we don't need it anymore, rotate it. Okay, that works. I'm gonna apply the scale to my box, so I'm gonna give it a new material, delete the principled BSDF, give it a volume scatter node, and hit this into the volume. Now you can see what happened in cycles. You can't see it in Eevee. You can see that he is like in haze right now. This is just pure haze, very dense haze. When we go down with the density, go up with the anisotropy, we can see that he's dipped in haze now. And that's cool. We could also add like a gradient node that it slowly falls off, but I don't think that's necessary. But what I am gonna do is having another haze kind of the same size around the baby and having a little move, because you could do that with like a smoke simulation, but that takes a lot of computer power and we ain't got time for that. So I'm just gonna make a little box right where my baby is. Don't be shy with the size, right there. Make it bigger along the X and Z axis, rotate it, apply the scale. Now we're going to repeat the step. We're going to give it a new material, volume scatter, plug this into volume. Now I'm going to give it also a noise texture node, plug this into the density. This goes in 0.6. And under 3D, we're going to click 40 so we can manipulate the value over time. This is a W value, so I'm going to go to frame number 1. And don't go too crazy here, but what we want is like animate, so I hit I, hovering over W, go to the last frame, and just play with it a little. It might be too much. Let's go to animated. If you want to see what we're doing here, just isolated. I'm gonna have a ramp node, a color ramp in between, in case it's too dense or not dense enough. So if I only want to see my noise texture, what it does, just connect this to my surface here, so I see what my noise texture does. I'm gonna make a texture coordinate node, a mapping node, so now I can see what my noise looks like. So I can adjust the scale. I want the scale to be quite big, so the number is small. Now I can increase the contrast a little, so this is what it looks like. If I want to see it in the movement, go. You see that it's moving a little, which is going to be helpful to give us the idea that it's actually smoke around him. You can always adjust your animation, make it stronger or not as strong, but yeah, I think that'll do. Now we're going to remove that from the surface again, plug this into the volume so we get the effect we want. You can always move it a little into the ground so we don't see it as much, because we don't want to get rid of our baby completely. And it's also true for the rest of the haze we made. So I'm just going to dip it more into the ground so we see more of our baby. And you see this building here? I think I'm just going to remove it in edit mode because it's interrupting. It's colliding with my baby here. So I think I'll try to select a few polygons here. Hit Control plus 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 until I have the whole section selected. Minus minus minus. I don't want to get too much. I'm just going to delete the faces. So now he has more space to play around. Okay, one more thing I want to do is I want helicopters to circle around him. So for that, I'm just going to type in helicopter in Blender Kit. Hope I'm going to get a good one. Great, I used that one before. Well, that's my helicopter. So I'm just going to have him hover from left to right, for example. I animate the location, go to the last frame, move him a little to the right. Is there a space between those buildings maybe? No, there is not. So just here, maybe it's flying up a little to the front. Animate the location again. I have a helicopter flying around him. Also gonna animate the rotation, that it starts like this, but maybe it just tries to slow down. So I'm just gonna rotate the other direction. So I have a little bit of extra movement here. I'm gonna have another simple helicopter model. Let's have it behind our baby. Let's not use this one. Let's try, I'm gonna use the same one. That one, the propellers are not animated, so I'm just gonna have it very far in the background, just passing. Preferably not through the buildings, but right behind. So animate the location, go to the first frame, bring it over here, and animate the location. Let's hope it's not gonna pass through any buildings here. It is a little, but it's behind, so it doesn't really matter. So we have a little bit of movement in the air here. Okay, in the very end, I want another volume box surrounding everything. A very light haze on everything. So I'm gonna make another cube, bring it into the right position, the right scale, just so everything is surrounded by haze. Apply the scale, make a new material, delete the principal volume, make a volume scatter, there we go, into the volume. This is 0.6, density is very low, 0.001, and that way our entire scene is going to be inside of haze, which is going to make it look a little more real. When I look through it in cycles, I can see it looks pretty cool, but obviously it's going to be a lot of work in compositing to make it look real cool and real. It's never going to look super real, but I did my best here with the video footage I had. Just for the baby, it's a little too dense, so I'm going to tone this down a little. Just need to find it. Yeah, it's the one with the texture. So I'm going to tone this down. And now we're done with the scene. And now I'm about to render the scene. Let's hope for the best. I'm not sure how good or bad this scene is going to be, but for now, you can enjoy the clip. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this workflow, I know it's a little longer video, but if you would like me to do those in a live stream, make sure to subscribe and like the video, of course, and see you in the next video. Toodaloo.